Hey, welcome back to the Interstellar Hobo. And today we're going to look at the K-Beacon Pro app to see how to adjust the beacon. We're going to go through the adjustment screens so that you can see exactly how to adjust one if you get one. And we'll talk a little bit about what the adjustments do. Okay, let's dig into it. Okay, I've taken the cover off the beacon, and I'm going to turn the beacon on. On the right, you see the white switch. I'm pressing that down. It clicks in. Now I'm holding it. Watch on the left. You see the blue LED? The beacon is now on. Now, you can physically shut the beacon off. You hold the same switch down until you see that LED start to flash. It'll flash 8 times and the beacon is off. Now I'm going to turn it back on so that it becomes usable for us in our demonstration. The beacon is now on. Okay, we're going to open up the K-Beacon Pro app. And then after we open that up, we are going to connect to our beacon. So up in the top right corner, I have to click the scan button. And then it'll start scanning for the beacon. And I only have one beacon turned on, so it has found the beacon. So let's connect. I'm just pressing on that white bar with the beacon's name. You can do this in your cell phone or on an iPad or whatever, anything that the app will run on. And if you're going to paste your UUID into a different app, like I'm using the speedometer app on my phone, it's actually called Speedometer 55 Pro. You should copy the UUID because a lot of apps will want you to paste the UUID in the field instead of typing it in. I'm not sure why, but on the app I have, if I type the UUID in, it just won't accept it. But if I paste it in, it takes it. So it's just how it is. Okay, so we're connected to the beacon, and you see upload in the right top corner. You only use that button if you make changes. You see on the left side the arrow. Right now I'm connected to the beacon. If I close the app like this, I'm still connected to that beacon, and the beacon will not broadcast. So I'm going to go back in, and the app disconnected from the beacon, but the beacon doesn't start broadcasting because it didn't see the app disconnect. So you would think your beacon broke. It wouldn't work. You could turn it off, turn it on. It wouldn't work. You have to go over in the top right corner and hit that arrow like this. Now the beacon's disconnected. And if I scan, it's still going to see my beacon. That's why it hasn't refreshed. And I'm going to open it up. And now you're connected. Up on the top, I'm on the General tab. And we have System Info. And that just tells you the model. It's a BC04P, the hardware version in the beacon, and the firmware version. Next is the beacon's name. And if you want to, you can change the beacon's name. It doesn't matter. It's not going to hurt anything because when the beacon's broadcasting, it only broadcasts the UUID, not the name of it. So you might want to name the beacon. If say you have 5 beacons and this one's going to open your garage door, you might name this beacon BC Pro _ garage, and that would be fine. When and if you rename your beacon, it has to be 17 characters or less. So you might have to make it BC Pro _ GAROPN, something to that effect. Again, if you make any changes, you'll have to click save up where it says upload. You'll have to click save. And then once you save that, then you will upload it when you're ready. Next, we have measured power. Now, measured power, these are the ranges you can set it, minus 100 to 10 dBm for RX power at 1 meter. What that means is if you move your beacon exactly 1 meter away from the device the app's on, you should be reading minus 59. Now you can change that, but if you change it, this minus 59 is like the base starting place that the app uses to determine how far away the beacon is when you put it out in the field and you're trying to find it. So unless you really understand what you're changing and how it's going to change the ratio of that other information, leave this alone. There's no reason to ever change that. Power always on. So if you change this to yes, the beacon's button will never shut it off again. So you might do that in case you have the beacon in a place where you think your kids are going to play with it or something else, and you don't want it shut off. It will run till the battery dies no matter what. Okay, I am not going to change that. I'm going to leave it to no. I want to be able to shut it off. Modify the password. That's the password. Leave it alone. If you do change the password and you forget that, the beacon is useless. A reset configuration won't change it back. The beacon is done. You can throw it away. Trigger list. So you can set up to 5 triggers in here, and by default the triggers are set to nothing, so they're not being used. Let's take a look while we're here at, we have trigger type now, and it's null. And then the only choice for triggering this beacon is motion. So we're going to click motion, and we're going to save that. And now when we go back, we've got a bunch of settings that we have to set. So first is trigger action, and it's either going to advertise, which means it's going to send its UUID out when it knows it's supposed to, or it can run a device alarm, or it can report to an app. Most of the time you'll use advertise, because the device alarm would probably be, you'd have to have a BLE server and then maybe a Raspberry, something of that effect. And then report to app, you'd have to have an app running in the background. And say you had the beacon set so that, let's say you have a bicycle in the garage. And if somebody moves that bicycle, it's going to tell the app, and the app is going to send you a notification. So that's a simple idea of what you could do with it. Trigger advertising slot. So you have slot 0 through 4, and I'll get back to the slots in a second. Advertisement change. If you choose yes, the beacon will broadcast the regular UUID during normal times, but switch over to a special UUID for a limited period of time after the trigger occurs. Okay? If you click no, it's only going to broadcast when it's triggered. Trigger advertised duration. So this can be between 1 and 7,200 seconds. And the default is 30 seconds. So let's say that motion triggers it. If I pick it up and shake it, it will advertise for 30 seconds its UUID, and then it will stop. If I had turned on or changed advertisement change to yes, it would broadcast the special UUID that I had to put in for that amount of time, and then it would go back to the normal UUID. And remember, UUID is a name. So let's say that the standard UUID, let's call it George, and then the special one is Teresa. So if the trigger's sitting still on the desk and nobody's touching it, it's going to be saying George is over here, George is over here. When I pick it up and shake it for 30 seconds, it's going to broadcast Theresa's over here, Theresa's over here, and after 30 seconds, it will go back to broadcasting George's over here. Okay? If I set that to no, it will not broadcast anything until I shake it, and then it will broadcast the default name George for 30 seconds. All right, trigger advertising power, and this is just how far the broadcast will go. So when I use it on my bike, I set it to -40. If I'm going to put my phone on the bike and use the app on the bike, if you had the thing in a field and you wanted it to broadcast 160 meters, basically a football field and a little more, then you would set it to 8 decibels. I'm going to set this to 40, and now I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to upload it. So now that's uploaded, okay? And my trigger is set to motion now. So motion sensitivity is 2 to 126. So 2 would be extremely sensitive. 126 would be, it would have to see some serious movement before it would trigger. The movement, it's capable of sensing movement in an XYZ. So think of a spear. Any way it moves inside that spear, it can sense movement. It's not just sensing movement on a linear straight line or vertically or horizontally. The next setting we're going to look at is sensor ODR, and that's hertz, and that is how often the sensor is polling or trying to detect something. The slower it is, the less power it uses. And if you just have the sensor if you just have the beacon broadcasting, say you're trying to find something, you can leave it where it's set at. But if you're going to use it for a triggering event, let's say we set it at 10 hertz. I'm not going to, but remember, for the sake of argument, it's at 10 hertz. And then sensor wake up duration. The valid range is 1 to 255 seconds. When the sensor detects the acceleration exceeds this sensitivity setting, and each unit equals 16 milligrams of force, and the duration exceeds the sensor wake-up duration times 1 over ODR, the motion detection event will be triggered. So let's say we set our broadcast to 60 seconds. Our ODR is 10. So 60 times 1 is 60 over 10, and that's 6. So after the sensor broadcasts for 60 seconds, it waits for 6 seconds. Even if you shake it, it's the beacon, nothing's going to happen till you hit second number 7. And then it will respond to the acceleration or the movement and start broadcasting again. Now, I'm going to go back here to trigger type, and I'm going to set it to null, save it, upload it. It's successful, and now our triggers are null. But now you know how to set a trigger in this model of beacon. Other beacons might use different triggers, so you have to go to the specs of the beacon, and depending on what you need it for, that's how you decide what beacon you're going to buy. Okay? So firmware update. It's checking now. Update failed. That means there is no update for your sensor or your beacon. If there was an update, it would have downloaded and automatically put it in your beacon. It would have told you that, and then it would have restarted the beacon. So a failure notice for firmware update is a normal notice that your beacon has no update. Now, are you sure you want to turn off the device? The long press button can power it on again. If I click OK, it'll shut the beacon off. I don't want to do that, but that's what that is. Reset the configuration. If you set up your beacon and it's not working and you can't figure out what's wrong, just come back here and use reset configuration. And it'll say, do you want to? If you say yes, it'll reset it, and then the beacon will shut off. Then you have to go out of the app and reconnect to it. The power profiler, this is battery life evaluation, and the model beacon I have doesn't support this feature, so it is null. Okay, now that's the general tab. So let's go to the slot 0. By default, this beacon comes set up in slot 0. So you have slot 0, slot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually 4, 0 through 4, which is 5 slots. Think of each slot as a specific mode the beacon has to operate in using the instructions that you set. So you could set 5 separate sets of instructions for this beacon. Each slot can have its own unique UUID. So the beacon could be set in slot 0 to just broadcast 100 yards, I'm here, and you could put a name on it. Now let's say that you put the beacon on the back of a turtle and you had it set so that if the turtle moves, it broadcasts a signal to you that the turtle is moving. So you'd have to have everything at the minimum sensitivities for that. And then you might want to set that so that the turtle, when the turtle starts moving, it'll broadcast that for 1 minute, and then it will stop and wait 30 seconds before it checks to see if he's moving. So that would be, say, slot 0. Then slot 1, you would set to iBeacon, and it would broadcast just where the beacon is, and you might have it broadcast once every 5 minutes at 160 meters. So then you could go out and you could find where the turtle had walked to. If you had an app on something that was monitoring the turtle, it would be reporting to the app as long as he was within the range you set. It would report that he's moving, and then if you decided you wanted to go out and find the turtle, you could use the standard broadcast that broadcasts every 5 minutes to find the turtle. It would be a pain because it would take you probably 20 minutes to find him because you're only broadcasting every 5 minutes. And the app is just going to tell you that you're 50 meters away or you're 20 meters away. And that goes back to that minus 59 measured power thing I told you about. Okay? So now you got an idea of what the slots are for. So let's look at how this beacon broadcasts right out of the box. The advertising types are disabled. So if you click that, the beacon pretty much is just static. It's not going to ever broadcast. You have K-sensor, UID, TLM, URL, iBeacon, and system. So if you set it for URL, it's going to broadcast a website that you have set it to. So if you were in say an art museum and you got by a sculpture and the guy that owned that sculpture wanted you to find his website so you could call him and order stuff, you could put URL in here, and that beacon would broadcast all day long that URL, and anybody that had an app open looking for that. And if you go into a museum or something like that, they'll have an app for you to open, and the beacons are able to find that app, and then the app would send you a notification or a URL in this case. All right. K-sensor up at the top, that has to do with like a heart sensor that you wear, a temperature sensor you wear. You could have maybe a cadence sensor, and then once you have that set, then you have to go back and you have to See, you've got sensor access here. Trigger only advanced, connectable to the sensor, TX hour, advanced mode, add interval, add type. So you notice it changed. This changes when we change the sensor. So we'll put it on URL and save that. And now on the bottom you see a URL address. TLM, save it. And down on the bottom we don't see anything because TLM is a custom broadcast. So let me upload that. Okay, and so you can see that nothing really changed here. And the slot is a TLM slot. We're going to go back to iBeacon. System is a custom one. It usually works through a server. So we're not going to go there. So we're back at iBeacon. I'm going to save it. I'm going to upload it. Now you know when we're on iBeacon, we see our UUID, major ID, and minor ID. So this is where the beacon's always broadcasting a signal, okay? The advertising interval. Your choices are 100 milliseconds to 40,000 milliseconds, anywhere in between there. Notice it's set to 1022.5 out of the box. That's because iPhones or Android phones don't scan all the time constantly for a beacon. They scan for the beacon, they wait. They scan for the beacon, they wait. If you had to set your beacon to, if you happen to set your beacon to the exact same frequency they scan at, and you turn the beacon on in between, halfway in between their waiting to scan time, it might never find the beacon, or it might take hours to find it. So if you set this to an odd number like this, 102.25, or you can make it 422.5 or 122.5, you're always going to have the iPhone be able to find the beacon pretty quickly because they're scanning not on the same boom, boom, boom on a timeline. They're doing boom, bam, boom, bam, boom, bam, and they're going to eventually hit. So that's what that's about, okay? Advertising channel, you've got 3 channels here. You can just leave that all on unless you're going to do something that's looking for a custom channel. If you have multiple beacons, you might want to use a custom channel. Advertising mode, this is important. PHY coded is a very new kind of broadcasting schema. As of 2025, there's no iPhones or Androids phones that are able to accept or understand PHY. So if you change your beacon to PHY and you disconnect from it, you're not going to be able to reconnect to it. On the beacon that I have, the model I have, if I would do that, I could go in and hold down the white button until the LED flashed, and then the beacon would broadcast its old UUID for 30 seconds. I'd have 30 seconds to connect, get in here, and change this back to legacy BLE, and save it and upload it. And if I didn't, I pretty much scrap my beacon. Okay? So leave that at legacy BLE 4.0. TX power, you know what that is. It's how far the beacon is going to broadcast. And I'm going to set mine to minus 40 and save it and upload it because I'm keeping the beacon close to my device. I'm not going to be putting it out in the field and looking for it. Connectable, yes. Now, if somebody finds your beacon and they know what it is and a password hasn't been set in it, they can go in, take the beacon, and change things and make it their beacon. So you could set the beacon up and say that it's not connectable. You can change that to no. And then nobody can connect to that beacon except you because you know the unique UUID. Okay? You can download a scanning app and scan for beacons out in the field, but if this is set to not connectable, that scanner won't be able to find it, and they won't be able to connect to it. So you can then, the beacon's going to be safe. It's going to be just yours. You would do that in, maybe if you're using a beacon to open your garage door or something, you want somebody else to be able to connect to it and mess with it, you would set that to no. Trigger only. When this feature is on, the slot will only broadcast when a trigger happens. So we have triggers disabled. If I enabled triggers, I would turn that on. UUID, this is the hex length. It's 36 characters, and there's an example. You can have numbers or letters anywhere as long as you follow the hex value, which is 0 to 9 integers or A to F letters. If you put in G, it's going to tell you that it's not allowed. If you make the name shorter, it's not allowed. If you make it longer, it's not allowed. So all these beacons, if you buy 50 of this model beacon, they're all going to have the same UUID. So you have to go in and change it to make it unique to you. Major ID and minor ID are just, think of it as a subname, like say your last name is Smith, the UUID in our example Smith, and the major would be Junior, and then the minor would be the third. Okay, you're just adding to the name to make it more unique. So between the UUID, the major, and the minor, you can make that beacon so unique that you're the only one that will ever be able to find it if you're using a specialty app that has the UUID in it. All right? And that is about it for setting up the beacon. These other slots are all disabled, and the beacon will work right out of the box, and the fact that we can connect to it is proof that it can work right out of the box. So now I'm going to upload the beacon, because if you don't upload, it doesn't save your changes. And you saw the bar come up and say the beacon was telling the app, I've got everything just like you got it set. There's no reason for me to be changed. And now I am going to disconnect from the beacon. This is critical. You have to disconnect. And here we go. We are now disconnected from the beacon, and the beacon is broadcasting just the way it was set. I hope that helped you. When it comes to the specialty broadcast the beacon has, you can go, if you buy a bluecharm beacon, you can go to their site, go under support on their website, and you can read. They tell you how to set everything, what it does, and give you example of devices that you would need to buy. And then it gets a little more complicated if you can't do basic programming like with the Raspberry Pi or whatever. Thanks for joining me on Interstellar Hobo. Subscribe, share, tell your friends, like the video if it helped you, and we'll see you next time with something new.